OK, US and British forces have carried out a new round of strikes against Houthi militants based in Yemen. Washington says the strikes come in response to repeated Houthi attacks on ships in the Red Sea. The militants say their attacks support Hamas, and that is considered a terrorist organisation by the US, Germany and other states.
A joint attack on Houthi targets, the second in less than 2 weeks. US and UK officials call it a proportionate response to the rebel group's attacks in the Red Sea. The Houthis say they are acting in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. The attacks have disrupted global shipping and stoked fears of inflation. They have also deepened concerns about a regional military escalation. In the streets of Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, support for the Houthis is strong.
These strikes do not scare us and will not turn a hair on our heads. We are steadfast and support Palestine from within our hearts.
Solidarity with the Palestinians has proven so popular that the Houthis have been able to recruit new fighters.
We will fight the American-British enemy in the Red Sea. I swear that we will go to the sea with our rifles and we will sink them into the sea, God willing.
US strikes over the past month have failed to stop Houthi attacks against shipping. The rebel group says it will continue until Israel's war in Gaza stops.
The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says the UK will take further military action against the Houthis if the rebels do not stop their attacks on shipping in the Red Sea.
We are not seeking a confrontation. We urge the Houthis and those who enable them to stop these illegal and unacceptable attacks. But if necessary, the United Kingdom will not hesitate to respond again in self-defence. We cannot stand by and allow these attacks to go unchallenged. Inaction is also a choice.
DW's Birgit Maass in London told us more about these most recent strikes by the US and the UK.
We have a Pentagon statement, and that says that 8 targets in Yemen were hit with what they call precision strikes. They also say that it's aimed at underground storage and at missile and surveillance capabilities. Now, when it comes to the justification for these strikes, you've already heard UK Foreign Secretary David Cameron. He further fleshed out in a statement that he does not believe the Houthi narrative, that this is all in retaliation to the war in Gaza, and he bemoans that Houthis have indiscriminately targeted shipping. So the narrative overall from the US and the UK and the general coalition that are behind these strikes is this is to protect international shipping, to protect the Red Sea that's so vital for global trade.
This is the second time that the US and UK have conducted these coordinated military strikes against the Houthis. Is there support for these attacks generally in the UK?
It's interesting. A recent poll did show that there was overall support by the British public, and also there is generally cross-party support when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East, and also about these attacks. There is a little bit of disquiet that the opposition leader wasn't briefed before these strikes, but generally there is cross-party support. That doesn't mean that there aren't also critical voices on the left of the Labour Party mainly, but also by some experts in the region. So they say that overall there should be a strategy of de-escalation, as one researcher puts it, with a ceasefire in Gaza at the heart of this de-escalation strategy. And I would say that the overall support for the strikes by the British public doesn't mean that there isn't also an anxiety about the conflict in the Middle East, of course, but also about these strikes. So there is, of course, the risk of that this could generally escalate the conflict, and this is something that I think the British people are aware of.
Well, I'm joined now by Ian Ralby, a maritime analyst at the Center for Maritime Strategy in Baltimore in the U.S. Ian, it's good to have you with us. These strikes by the U.S. and the U.K. against Houthi targets, is this helping or is it hurting the Houthis?
It is certainly helping the Houthis and hurting global shipping. Unfortunately, if the goal was to de-escalate the situation and deter the Houthis, they have failed. If the goal was just to diminish some of the ballistic military capabilities of the Houthis, then it perhaps has been a success. But the fact is, if the Houthis continue apace, they will be able to disrupt shipping for a long time, no matter how much ballistic capabilities they have, because it does not take very much. So this is really complicating the situation further, and it is bringing us to a point where we're going to have a long-term difficulty in making ship movements through the Red Sea possible.
Well, what would you recommend then to protect these commercial ships that are trying to use, what is an important artery for global trade?
It is an important artery, but at this point, it is wise to avert the whole situation, avoid it, and go around the continent of Africa while we can handle the situation with the Houthis in a different manner. We have to draw their attention away from the maritime domain. As you just heard, they are very energized. They are actually recruiting. They're getting stronger. They're getting more emboldened by this. And unfortunately, that means that the shipping channel through the Red Sea is going to be a problem for a long time unless we pull their attention elsewhere. And that has to be done through empowering the government of Yemen to retake the sovereign control over the country of Yemen. The Houthis are fighting against the government. They have been for more than a decade, and we are coming to this conflict somewhat late. And at this point, the Houthis are finding themselves moving from being on the back foot, as they were 2 months ago, to now having all the momentum behind them. This could be a very long-term problem if we do not change approach. Washington
is accusing Iran of, and I'm quoting here, of being directly involved in the Houthi attacks on ships in the Red Sea. Does this, in your opinion, I'm assuming this complicates the situation?
Well, Iran has a long and complicated history in the maritime space of the region already. For years, they've been launching attacks against ships, but they've done so in a very concentrated, very targeted fashion. What the Houthis have brought to the table is the ability to be completely erratic, unpredictable, and as a result, create chaos. So whereas the Iranians have had a history of using maritime attacks to make specific messages towards specific interlocutors, the Houthis are taking advantage of the existing situation in Gaza and using it to strengthen themselves, recruit, and do other things. Now, Iran's involvement further complicates the picture, but it is a difficult situation we are potentially putting ourselves in, where we're both using the Houthis as the proxy to get to the other. Iran's using the Houthis as a proxy to get to us, and we're using the Houthis as a proxy to get to Iran. We have to take them out of the equation. If we're going to deal with Iran, we need to deal with Iran. If we're going to deal with the Houthis, we need to get them away from shipping. And so as we continue to link all these different conflicts, we run the risk of creating a wider situation that is intractable. And we really can't afford to have that, given the importance of shipping moving through that Red Sea channel.
And Ian, I'm hearing what you say, and considering what we just saw this week, that the European Union has agreed to send a military mission to the Red Sea to protect ships. Do you think that is just going to be pouring more fuel on the fire?
Well, it's really interesting to note that the European Union is not joining Operation Prosperity Guardian, the American-led mission. They're standing up their own approach. Now, the EU is not inherently a military organization. It's not NATO. It is an economic community. And so they have an interesting history in combating Somali piracy, and they have a long-standing mission, EU NAVFOR Atalanta, that continues to operate to protect ships against piracy. And so putting the EU in the picture is an interesting point, because it is not inherently an escalation in terms of a sovereign state against Yemen or a military alliance against Yemen. It is an economic community working to protect shipping. And so they're likely to be viewed differently, and they may be able to change the equities a little bit and give us some space to continue to protect the ships that are under attack, while also diplomatically and otherwise working to divert the Houthi attention away from the maritime domain.
Ian Ralby with the Center for Maritime Strategy in Baltimore in the U.S. Ian, we appreciate your time and your analysis tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.